So yeah, that definitely makes me a bit of a hypocrite. Hello guys, welcome back to Car Obsession and welcome to what I believe is episode 24 of Living with a Mazda MX-5. To be honest, I've completely lost count. Anyway, on to the main topic. A few days ago I stumbled upon a post on Facebook. It was in the Mk1 MX-5 owners group, and there was a discussion, well it was more like a debate, on whether or not you should keep your Mk1 MX-5 standard or whether it's okay to modify it. And that got me thinking, do I regret modifying Monique, my very own Mk1 Mazda MX-5? Well, let's go for a drive and discuss further. If you happen to be new to my channel, firstly, hello, thank you for joining me. My name's Aaron, and this is Monique, my Mk1 Mazda MX-5. Well, if I'm going to be picky, this is actually a Unos Roadster. She is an S Special Type 2, and I don't know how many there are in the UK, but there can't be too many, so I would argue she is a rare car. Fellow MX-5. Yeah, got the MX-5 wave. Sorry, I digress. So as I was saying, Monique is quite a rare model. How rare, I don't know specifically. And that does kind of beg the question, well, should I have left her standard? For what it's worth, when I bought her, she had a few modifications already. Now, to go through the S Special Type 2 specification, there are quite a few things that came as standard, so I won't go through all of them, but just to name a few: air conditioning, electric windows, central locking, a strut brace at the front, limited slip differential, Bilstein suspension, what else haven't I mentioned? The Mazda Sensory sound system, sorry. Oh, that is heaven. Absolute heaven. Yeah, there were the S Special Type 2 was quite a good specification. Other things I've forgotten to mention, which are silly because they're one of the largest talking points in this video, are the 15-inch Bbs alloys, which, as you can see, have gone, and a Momo leather steering wheel. Let's kick things off with the steering wheel and the alloys, because they were things that were gone before I bought the car. So the Bbs alloys, if they had been fitted to the car when I bought her, they would have remained. Sadly though, they were sold on somewhere down the line. I don't know whether that was when the car was in Japan or whilst it was in the UK, I don't know. So they are long gone, and there was a period where I was looking at buying a replacement set, but as you can imagine, they come up very, very rarely. I did know someone who knew someone who was selling a set, but I never got the price. I chased them up and I never heard back, but they would have been pretty expensive because, as I've said, they are rare. For my regular viewers, if you can remember, when I originally bought Monique, she was wearing a set of Mk alloys that were used on the Icon, the Phoenix, and also the Arizona MX-5 models. And they looked all right, but I just found the spokes to be too thin. So I wanted something that was a thicker spoke. Ideally, I wanted a set of rotors, but they were a bit too pricey for me. So it was by chance that Patsy stumbled upon this set of Mk alloys, which were used for an MX-5 model, although I must admit I'm not too sure which one, so if you know, do let me know. And I wanted a bronze set of alloys, not gold. So Patsy, my wife, showed me them on Facebook Marketplace, and I thought, oh, I'm not too sure. They were a very good price, but I thought, is gold going to be a bit too blingy, a bit too ostentatious? But I took the plunge, I bought them, And then they kind of sat around for quite a few weeks, because to be honest, I was afraid of putting them on the car, because I thought, oh, they're going to be really divisive. And yes, gold is very much a bold colour, but I fitted them, and I think the alloys match the Montego blue paintwork really well. So that's a modification I've done. It's kind of a modification, but not a modification, because the Mk alloys, they are OEM Mazda wheels. So it's not as if I've got them, well, OEM Mazda MX-5 wheels. So it's not as if they're from a different car. It's not like when people would put Evo wheels onto an EP3 Civic Type R, that kind of thing. So that's one of the first kind of modifications I did. You would have heard another modification, which is of course the exhaust. That was actually, I think that was the first modification I did to 1.8 with the help of fellow YouTuber Oscar Brown. And I would argue this is my favourite modification that I've done, well, with the help of Oscar. The original exhaust sounded okay, to be honest. It didn't sound too bad. But once I fitted this, I fell in love. I absolutely did. For me, this exhaust is perfect. The noise, the tone, the low-speed burbles. I've said it before, absolutely perfect. And in fact, if I were to walk into a custom shop to get a custom exhaust fabricated, I would probably walk out of the shop with that exhaust. And I'll say it again, if I walked into a fabrication shop and asked for a custom exhaust, I probably would have walked out with something that sounded pretty much exactly the same as this. So the fact that this is bought off the shelf is brilliant. Yes, it does drone a bit on the motorway, but to be honest, you kind of learn to block it out. So the exhaust is probably my favourite modification. And then after that, again with the help of Oscar Brown, he did most of the work. We fitted a set of Gasgold Pro coilovers. Now, as much as the 15-inch alloys were gone when I bought the car, the original suspension was also gone. It had suspension, of course, but it wasn't the OEM setup, and that's because the original owner found the ride to be a bit too stiff, and if I'm not mistaken, he also said that the ride height was a bit too low. So yeah, so when I bought the car, it had KYB XLC dampers. I'm not too sure on the springs. They may have been the original springs or aftermarket springs. I don't know, to be honest. And to be fair, the ride was absolutely fine. I had no issues. The handling was well, I was going to say adequate. It was more than adequate. The handling was good. Let's get rid of this really slow farm lorry. The handling was perfectly fine. Beautiful. The handling was absolutely fine, but I wanted something that was adjustable and more flexible in regard to the kind of setup I'd want, or if I wanted to change it. So I got a set of Gasgold Pro coilovers, which I think were about £700, so not cheap but worth the money. And I've got the ride height set to about, I think it's 31.5 centimetres at the front and 32.5 centimetres at the rear. So it's not super light, it's still usable, but it is lower than your average MX-5. And you can also adjust the damping firmness as well. So I've got the damping set to just under halfway, so it's leaning a bit towards comfort than it is rigidity, if you get what I mean. So the exhaust and the coilovers were the first modifications that I'd done. When I bought the car, as I said, this didn't have the Bbs alloys, and it also didn't have the original Momo steering wheel. So this steering wheel here, this is made by Momo, but this is an aftermarket one which has got an airbag delete. The original steering wheel did have an airbag, but because it did have an airbag, it was quite a chunky unit. And I still have that steering wheel at home because, oh hello, Aston Martin, lovely. Because I got in touch with the previous owner and asked if he had the original steering wheel or any other bits, and he did. So he gave me the original steering wheel for free, which was nice of him. But although I've got it at home, I think it's up in my loft somewhere, I probably won't refit it to the car because it is quite chunky, and the reason why he removed it was because he found that he would often get his right leg stuck between the steering wheel and the door, and to be honest, he was smaller than me, so I think if I did refit the original steering wheel, I would have the same issue. So I can slouch down a bit if I want to, and I've still got a bit of space for my legs and my knees. If I had the old steering wheel, I would probably be a bit stuck right about now. And the original steering wheel is quite ugly as well. I thought it'd have more of a classic look, like some of the other Momo steering wheels you can get for the MX-5, or perhaps the Nardi steering wheels. But this one was big, chunky, and not very handsome. This Momo steering wheel is smaller, it's more compact, and I just think it looks better in the car. So, what have we checked off so far? Steering wheel, alloys, exhaust, coilovers. Okay, getting through them quite quickly. Another modification is of course the roll bar. Some MX-5 owners would argue you don't really need a roll bar, and I can sort of see where they're coming from, because let's face it, how often are you going to be rolling your car? But it's better to be safe than sorry. I have seen people roll their MX-5s, and there are some owners that say, oh well, if it was that much of an issue, Mazda would have fitted roll bars from factory like Caterhams do. I can sort of see the argument, but for the sake of 200-300 quid and potentially saving your life, why wouldn't you? Yes, it does add a bit of weight, but they're not overly heavy. As well as protecting you from rolling the car, well, won't stop you from rolling the car, but if you do roll the car, you'll be protected. As well as that, it also makes the chassis more rigid, therefore it gives you better cornering because there's less body roll. Oh, no, that gear's too high. That's also too high. MX-5's not known for power. Actually, that brings me quite nicely on to other bits I have thought about doing to Monique whilst I've owned her. So there was a period where I wanted to turbocharge her, because I would love to own a turbocharged MX-5, I really would. But the more I drove her, the more I really began to appreciate and embrace the natural aspiration power delivery. It's really rewarding to rev this car out and just to let it climb up the revs and crescendo when it gets to about 7,200 RPM. So I'm not going to turbocharge her. There was a point where I was kind of set on doing it, but I just think it might spoil the car. Don't get me wrong, turbocharged MX-5s are good fun. I've had a passenger ride in one, but I just wanted to keep her pure, so to speak. So turbocharging is not something I'm going to be doing anytime soon. Another modification I almost forgot about are the pads and discs. So the brake pads and brake discs are from EBC. They are aftermarket, and it's the green stuff pads, which I would say, I'm not an expert on EBC, but I think they're kind of fast road use / a bit of track use. And as well as wanting to turbocharge Monique, there was a time when I was thinking about doing track days in her, which is why to be fair, that's kind of the main reason why I got the roll bar and why I fitted the EBC brakes, because the original brakes were just fine. To be honest, I had no real reason to replace the original brakes, because There's plenty of meat left on the brake pads and they were working fine. But because I thought, oh, actually, I may want to take this on a track, I wanted an upgrade basically. But the more I've driven Monique, the more she's become very precious to me, and I've become extremely sentimental over her. So the thought of punishing her by abusing her on a racetrack, it kind of makes me shudder. I just, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I won't be taking Monique on track anytime soon. And even if I were to take her on track, which is unlikely, it would be once in a blue moon. It may be if I happen to be at some car events which are held at a track. You can pay a little bit of money and have a little play on the track. So I may do that kind of thing, because that's only a little short session. It's a little burst of activity on the track. But I could almost say with 100% certainty that I wouldn't take her on a full track day. No. That's something that I really don't plan on doing anytime soon. Some of you may be wondering if I have any plans for any other modifications, and the simple answer for that is no. Much like fellow YouTuber Car Focused and his Ford Focus RS, he's at a point where he's happy with the modifications he has done, and his car is pretty much OEM plus. So he's tweaked a few bits here and there, but ultimately the car is still relatively standard. And that's how I see Monique. She is kind of OEM plus. Okay, she has got a fair few modifications, but nothing really outlandish. And it's to a degree kind of improving on what Mazda did in their factories. Some people won't like me for saying that, but that's just my opinion. So that brings me back to the original question that's in the title and I asked at the very top of this video. Do I regret modifying Monique, my Mazda MX-5? No, is the simple answer. Don't get me wrong, I would like to fit the 15-inch Bbs Alloys if I had a set, but to be honest, it's going to be really difficult to find a set. And even if I did, I don't think I would fit them, or I would certainly have to think twice about it, because I've really come to embrace Monique's gold alloys. Yes, they aren't for everybody, and they are going to be quite divisive, but I just think it matches the paintwork quite nicely. There have been some people that have said, oh, it reminds them of like an old school Subaru Impreza, but in my mind, I look at Monique and I kind of think of a Renault Clio Williams. Do you remember those back in the day? Dark blue paint, gold alloys. So for me, I look at Monique, I think that's a Clio Williams spec, not a Subaru Impreza spec. Anyway, I've digressed. Do I regret modifying Monique? As I've said, no, I don't. I'm happy with what I've done with her. I can't think of any modifications that I look back at and think, no, I wish I hadn't have done that, because I think everything I've done to the car has improved it, especially that exhaust. And I'm happy, I'm content, I'm satisfied. I don't feel the need to do anything else to her. There may be some bits I do, but they're going to be quite minor and rather insignificant. Bear with me, there's a very nasty dip in the road here, and I scraped the exhaust on it earlier, which was very annoying. That's better. For example, there may be points where you've heard the doors rattle, and if hopefully you heard it then. I was about to say if I shut up, but I couldn't finish my sentence because the rattle got louder and I wanted you guys to hear it. To be honest, this isn't that much of an annoyance. I can block this out quite easily. But yes, the doors do rattle, and that is just an MX-5 thing, particularly for the Mark 1 and the Mark 2/Mark 2.5. I don't know about the Mark 3s. It probably doesn't affect them, and I would certainly hope it doesn't affect the Mark 4s, because they are still quite a new car. Anyway, yes, the doors and windows rattle. and that's because the door bushes from the factory aren't that great. So you can get aftermarket door bushes which stop this annoying rattle. Well, annoying to some, like I say, I can kind of block it out, it's not too much of an issue. But apparently the door bushes can also make the car a bit more rigid, which I find it a little hard to believe, but I suppose if the doors are more sturdy and I don't know how to describe it. If the doors are kind of fixed in place more, that's what I'm trying to get at, then I suppose it could improve rigidity. But there's something else I feel as if I want or need to do to the car. I would love to get her resprayed at some point, because her paintwork is looking quite tired in places, and that's fine. She is an older car, she's over 20 years old, she's allowed to look a little bit weathered, let's say, but I would love to see the paintwork factory fresh again, I really would. But that is quite an expensive job if you want it done properly. So it's going to be a long time since, well, it's going to be a long time until I have the money to do that. Now, taking Monique out of the equation, how do I feel about Mark 1 MX-5s being modified? Do I think it's right or wrong? I think it depends on the model. If it's a rare Mark 1 or it's a special edition, then I think they should be kept standard. Although, to a degree, I am a hypocrite, because I had a Mark 2 Sport, which was limited edition, and I had plans to modify that before I sadly had to scrap it. And Monique, she's quite a rare model, and I've modified her. So, yeah, that definitely makes me a bit of a hypocrite. But if I had, the thing is, Monique was modified when I bought her. If she had been standard, then who knows, I may have kept her standard. I probably wouldn't have done, to be fair, but I think if a Mark 1 is rare or limited edition, I think it should be left standard. However, ultimately, if people want to modify their cars, it's up to them. The car should be unique and personal to you. And I think the most important thing is, as long as a Mark 1 MX-5 is being cherished and used and enjoyed, surely that's the main thing. It doesn't matter whether it's standard or whether it's got stupid camber or the ride height is so low that you scrape every time you run over a twig. As long as that owner loves his or her car, then what's the issue? There isn't any. As long as Mark 1 MX-5s are being kept on the road, you know what? I couldn't give a monkey's whether or not they're standard, modified, slammed, stanced, because it's just wonderful to see a Mark 1 MX-5 on the road. So I do hope you have enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your views, guys. Do you agree with modifying Mark 1s, or do you think that is sacrilege? Please do drop a comment in the comment section below. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, comment if you want to. If you are subscribed, don't forget to click the bell notification so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time, guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.